Hello and welcome to episode 159 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is October 10th, 2022. And today I'm wearing two fairly old things. The shawl I'm wearing is the Nuvem by Martina Behm, and I knit this 9 years ago. I checked on Ravelry, and back then I bought the pattern online, but you can also get it in this book, Strick mich Originale. There's an English version called Originals, and I think this is it's a second pattern in the book. So this is her Nuvem. Nuvem, I think, is the Portuguese word for cloud, and it is a bit like a cloud, the way it keeps you warm, and you can wrap it around yourself. If you look on my project page on Ravelry, you can see that I can use it as a blanket, and there's a picture with me lying on the sofa completely covered in this shawl. So it's a fairly simple design that starts in the middle, and you knit this what's this shape called in English? No idea. But once you start, the start is a bit fiddly because of the where you cast on. But once you get it going, it's fairly simple because you just increase at these 6 spots where you put your markers, and it's a fairly mindless knit. And then with the original, you just double the stitches, I think, to get this sort of ruffled edge. But I thought that was too boring, so I got this pattern from some other book for this knitted on edge, and I decided to do this knitted on edge, and it took me forever to finish the edge. I think I knit almost 100 grams of yarn into this edge. And at first I was a bit worried because the colors come out completely different with these short rows than these very long rows of the shawl. But now I think it's really nice. And the yarn is opal sock yarn from the 100 Wasser series. So it's inspired by one of 100 Wasser's artworks. And it was the glitter edition. So one year they did the 100 Wasser colors with glitter. And I thought it was, I didn't want to knit it into socks because then nobody would see it. So I thought a big shawl is the perfect thing for the yarn to be seen. And the pullover I'm wearing is even older than the shawl. It does have a Ravelry page, but it doesn't say when I started or finished the pullover. But I could see that the project page was created 10 years ago. So this pullover is probably a bit older than 10 years. And it's a fairly simple pattern. It was in one of Wollerödel's magazines. And it's just, you just knit up, increase the stitches, then you do the neckline and knit down, and then you have 2 seams at the sides for the sleeve and the sides. And this is the 8-ply opal sock yarn, and I think this was one of the first pullovers I ever knit out of sock yarn, and I've had it for 10 years. I've been wearing it a lot, and you can see there's a bit of pilling happening, which is, I think, quite normal for something that you wear a lot. But it's not too bad. It's not too much, and still looks okay. Still keeps me warm. I probably wouldn't have chosen the color if I could have chosen, but back then when I knit things for the shop window display, that's the word, I couldn't choose the color. I had to go with the color that was in the brochure so that the customers would recognize it. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing today. Now on to some newer things, on to finished objects. I have 1 finished object today. I have 3 new cast-ons, but I didn't have a new cast-on last week, so I think it's okay. I finished the Springfield socks. This is a pattern that I test knit for the designer Tanya, and the test has been finished. I wanted to check. I'm pretty sure the pattern is available now. It's linked on my project page, which is linked underneath the video. So if you want to knit this fun pattern, feel free to go and get the pattern. So this is another 100 Wasser colorway by Opal. Love the bright colors. I added the solid color orange and purple for the toe and heels. And yeah, not quite sure whether I'm going to keep the pair for myself or give them to my aunt as a present. We have the same shoe size, so I can always decide later. And with this colorway, you can see it's a really long colorway until something repeats. So I think, yeah, this probably. So I think this whole thing is one color repeat, which is really long, and I'm very happy that I'm not trying to do exactly the same socks, but I'm quite happy to have the colors in different places. Yeah, so that's my finished object for today, a pair of socks. Then on to other socks that I'm knitting on. The next pair are the socks out of the rainforest colorways. These are from this year's rainforest colors, and I'm knitting this funny pattern, and it's in this magazine. I brought all the books and magazines today. I was asked, I think on the German podcast, which magazine it was, so I thought I'll quickly show it. I think you should still be able to get it in a normal bookshop or shop for magazines, knitting magazines, I don't know. But yeah, this is the pattern. And I continued knitting on the second sock. Still haven't done too much, but I decided the pattern just says to knit to keep knitting in pattern until you do the heel, but I prefer to have a bit of stockinette stitch before I start the heel, because those short row heels are fairly small, and I think if you knit a bit of stockinette before, it looks better, but I think it also fits better. And I have started knitting these stockinette bit, which means I had to decrease some stitches because I increased after the beginning. Because of the chevron pattern, it sort of gets smaller and you have to have more stitches. So I decreased stitches in preparation for the heel, and I think I need to do one more colorful round and then 3 rounds in the dark color, and then I'll do the same heel with the half the heel in the colorful yarn and then the other half in the dark yarn. So, and again, the color stripes come out completely differently. I really like that. Yeah, so that's the rainforest sock. Then I have my sock couple that I'm knitting out of the Schafpate yarn. I chose this color for her socks, and I finished the first sock. So the pattern is called Treppenviertel by Nicola Susan, and the ribbing goes this way on this side, but it goes this way on this side, and then the second sock will be sort of the other way around. I have to be careful where to put the heel so that you can either wear these stripes on the outside or the inside, but the socks will not be exactly the same. And again, I started the second sock, and as I talked about last week, I am knitting on a mini circular needle now to make sure I don't get this lettering that I had on this sock. It's not too bad, and I think once I've washed them it won't be visible, but I thought if I can avoid them completely, I'll do that. And you can see the color, so it's the same color as here, but it sits at the beginning of the sock. And with this colorway, the repeat is a lot shorter, the color repeat. So it's just, I think, this bit, and then this color repeats. Or if we look down here, yeah, it's like from here to here. It's not really short, but it's shorter than with the 100 Wasser color. So that's sock number 2 that I'm knitting on, and I started a new pair of socks. And the yarn I'm using is a new series of colors by Opal, so I thought I'll quickly show you the colors, just so you know. The series is called Fantastic Sky, and it's a 6-ply yarn or DK weight yarn. and this is one of the colors, beautiful blue gray. And we have the sort of typical male sock color with gray and brown. We have a fairly light green, which is sort of different from the usual opal colors. This color, on the other hand, is rather typical, very nice. Then we have a very bright purple and yellow color. There's this beautiful turquoise and green color. So this is one of the ones that I really like a lot, but this is my favorite color. It's of course turquoise, and it has a bit of gray and a bit of purple in it. It's beautiful, and it's already sold out, as is this color, which has this beautiful pink and some blue and a little green. And I'm knitting a pair of socks for my sister out of this yarn. You probably all know that my sister is also a knitter, but she is not a big sock knitter. She will knit socks every now and then if she feels she has to, or she wants to have socks. But right now she's not doing well, so I decided to knit a pair of socks for her. And I also started doing something else for her. So yeah, I'm doing a very simple broken rib pattern, nothing special, but I think the yarn is so nice I don't have to have a big pattern or complicated pattern in there. And I really want to get the socks done as quickly as possible. So I decided to go for something simple. And this is what I'm doing. And again, I did a, I think it's called a German short row heel in English. In German, we say boomerang heel, like a boomerang. And again, I did a bit of stocking stitch before I started the heel, just to make it look nicer and sit nicer on the foot. Yep, so these are my sister's socks and the new yarn that that I have in my shop. Okay, then the next project on double pointed needles are the Latvian mittens I'm knitting. There's another book that I can show you. It's this, I think the English title is Knit Like Latvian, and it's full of these beautiful mittens and cuffs and fingerless mitts. And I'm knitting a opal yarn combined with an alpaca sock yarn by Hansa Farm. This is the first one. And I finished this first little pattern that I decided to do the same on both mittens. But because I'm at a different point in this yarn, it looks a bit different because the yarn is a bit lighter and the contrast is a bit stronger. So, oops, wrong side. Here the light yarn was a bit darker, but here because it's a bit lighter, the color, the pattern comes out more clearly. I hope you can see the difference. Yeah, so this is number 1, this is number 2, and I've already done 2 of the 3 rounds that come after this pattern, and that's the bit where I changed the colors. So instead of doing 1 dark and 2 light colors, I did 1 dark, 1 light, and then another dark color, a dark round. Yeah, I'm just knitting the dark round, and then the next round I'll start with the pattern. I will have the dark blue as the background, and I'll have the opal color as the contrast color, and I'm really excited to see what the difference will be between the two, and whether the pattern looks better or maybe less good. We'll see. Very exciting. So that's that. Then I have, let's do the other new project first. I started knitting a square, and it sort of looks as if I was knitting a square for our knit along, where we do 50 centimeter square to be donated, but this is a different square. And this is the other project I'm knitting for my sister. She started knitting a blanket last year, and her plan was to do 4 big squares, sew them together, or have me sew them together. And then she has a square blanket that she can use with her Japanese table, where you have a sort of heating underneath the table, and then you can somehow put the blanket in between the tabletop and the heating, and then it's bigger than the table, so it sort of sits on your lap. The blanket sits on your lap, and you have your feet underneath the table where it's nice and warm. It's a bit complicated, but anyway. So she finished knitting 2 of the squares last year, and she wanted to knit the other 2 this year. But now, as I said, she's not feeling well, and she's not really able to knit a lot at the moment. So a friend of ours and I decided to help her with her blanket, and I'm knitting one of the missing squares, and our friend is knitting the other square. So hopefully we can help her to get her blanket finished. And what she did for the first 2 squares is she chose one of Opal's black and white colors, and you can see there are several of those. So they often have a gray and white colorway in their different series. And then the first half of the square, she combined it with this dark gray. And then the second half of the square, she combined 2 different colorful yarns. So one half will be a bit lighter and one half will be a bit darker. I started with the dark half of the square, and I picked the sort of black and white color from this year's Rainforest series. So this is going to be 1/4 of a blanket for my sister. Now the next project with sock yarn that I'm knitting is this beautiful hat I'm knitting out of the beautiful Wolldackel yarn, and I think the colorway's name is Aniva Cosma. And as you can see, I finished the first half of my hat. I finished the decreases, and I started knitting with a mohair. This is the yellow mohair silk yarn by Hansa Farm, and I am going to knit exactly the same hat out of this material, and then I have 2 hats that I can sort of put one into the other, and then when I fold the rim up, I will either have a colorful hat with a mohair silk brim or the other way around. It's interesting how different the knitting feels with this very thin yarn compared to the sock yarn. Most people think sock yarn is thin, but start knitting with 1 strand of mohair silk and suddenly the sock yarn will feel a lot thicker. Yeah, so there's a lot of knitting, solid color knitting in my future, but I do hope to get it done as quickly as possible because I want to be wearing the hat. So that is that, and that is all my, no it's not. I made a mistake with my notes because I should have put pullover instead of hat. I put gnome hat, but I have long since finished my gnome hat, but I'm still knitting on the gnome pullover. And this is the my 1 sock yarn garment I'm knitting at the moment, and I continued knitting on my gnomes. So there are these mushrooms in the bottom of the front and back. There's no pattern in the sleeves, but now I'm knitting the yoke, and I continue knitting on the gnomes. So I think last time I showed you the pullover, I had already started with the hats, but now the hats have grown quite a bit, but there are still 10 more rounds to be knit on the gnome hats, and there are no decreases during the color work, so I have to knit all the, I don't know, 200 and something stitches, or is it 300? I don't know. Many stitches, a lot of gnomes, but I really enjoy the knitting, and I can't wait to have the hats finished, because once they are finished, I can start decreasing, and there will be a few short rows to get the back higher than the front, but I think the rest of the pullover should work up fairly quickly. So really looking forward to doing that. This is a opal solid color yarn, and this colorful yarn is out of the Beauty series. It's a fantastic color, I think. And this blue gray is also from the beauty series. Yeah, and as we are now at the talking about gnomes and the year of gnomes and everything, I did not finish the mystery gnome, otherwise it would have been in the finished object section. So I'm still knitting on the big version of the 10th mystery gnome. And I still haven't decided how to stuff the gnome. So that's the main reason I haven't finished it. But I did knit the beard, and I thought it'd be a lot nicer to show you if I already sew things together. So this is I chose the simple beard for this gnome. I chose the sort of less round nose. The other gnome, the other version has the round nose, and I chose the bigger hands. So there were two options for the hands, and I chose the one color arms. Yeah, still haven't finished the bottom. Right now there's a huge big ball of yarn inside just to keep him upright. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to having this done, but I just have to make a decision on how to stuff this big guy. Yeah, maybe next week I can tell you what I've come up with. So that's today's gnome. Haven't started the October gnome yet. I've made a decision which pattern to knit. It's the Here We Gnome Again. I think that's what it's called. That I've already knit that pattern, I think 4 times. So this is going to be the 5th, but I love it. It's my favorite gnome pattern, so I just had to do it again. Hopefully I'll start it this week, then I can show you next week. Then there's another garment I'm knitting, and that's the vest out of the Coconuts book. Did I bring the book? I wanted to bring all the books I knit from today. Didn't. I'll show you next week. Maybe it's finished next week, because I finished knitting. I finished the last ball of yarn that I had. This is all I have left. Didn't want to start the row. So this is as big as it gets. I still have a bit of leftover yarn from one of the fronts, and I hope this will be enough to cast off the stitches and maybe even do an I-cord bind off, but I haven't really made up my mind what to do yet, and I couldn't find the leftover yarn, so there were 2 reasons I couldn't finish it last week. But I found the yarn. It was in one of the project bags, and I wanted to use the project bag for something, and I looked inside and there was the yarn. So I know where it is now, so maybe this week I can finish knitting this, and then yeah, I'll wash it, and I probably block it to get it a bit longer, but we'll see. Don't know yet. But it's out of the Coconuts book. It's the first time I knit this this pattern, but it's not just the pattern, it's the technique, it's the way she sort of does all the projects in the book sort of follow the same schematic. I don't know how to explain it. Next time I'll bring the book and I'll try and explain it better. And then maybe this will be done. So this is the other garment I'm knitting on. I did not knit on either of my shawls. So it seems I knit on them every other week. So last week I showed them, the week before I didn't. So I hope this week I will knit on both of them again. I crocheted on the Talavera Blanket. The pattern is from the Simply Crochet magazine, and as I expected last week, I did get the new edition which has the last part of the pattern. So now I have all 7 parts of the Talavera Blanket pattern, and I just added 2 rounds, but as I said, long rounds, so it takes quite a bit of time. And I finished those front post, I think these are front post double treble crochets. That's what it's called in English, in British English. And the American version will probably be front post. Is it a treble then? If it's a double crochet? I don't know. Anyway, so I said they sort of look like flower stems, and they will get a little thing, I think something like this, or like these. So, but in a different color, so they won't be white. There'll be white stems and then colorful flower buds or something. But the first color will only have put a bud on every other stem, and then the next color will do the others. And what I hadn't seen in the picture is that every other stem is just a straight line, but the others in between, they have like two different lines, and it sort of looks either like a leaf or like a second stem, but it will only get one of those flower buds. But that was quite interesting. I like those little surprises when I look in at a pattern and I start crocheting and something unexpected happens, and then at first I think I'm doing something wrong, but then I keep going, and then I take a closer look at the picture and I realize, oh, it's even more interesting than I thought. So let's see how far I get with the first color flower bud, and then we'll see how big this blanket will get in the end. And then last project that I'm going to show you, and it's the third new cast on, and that is another square that I'm knitting, and that's actually a square that I'm going to donate for the Viva Vittoria organization or happening or whatever that will happen next year in Darmstadt, where they want to highlight the topic of violence against women. And they're going to lay out as many blankets as possible in one of the public squares in Darmstadt. And to be able to do so, they need many knitted and crocheted squares. And this is one that I am going to donate. And I am using the leftover yarn from the vest that I knit as a theatre costume some weeks ago. And this is what it looks like. It's completely improvised. I was not using a pattern, which probably explains why the middle is not looking too nice. I don't know what I did wrong, but it's sort of it's not lying flat at all. And I didn't really notice for quite a while because I wasn't really looking at my knitting. I was too distracted. I was doing something at the same time as I was knitting this. I was probably talking to people or teaching or something. And when I looked at it, I realized it doesn't really look very good. But I will see if it blocks out once I finish the square. And if it doesn't, I decided I'm going to snip the yarn somewhere around here. And I'll just undo the middle and pick up the stitches and then knit a new middle for the square. That shouldn't be too difficult, I've decided. We'll see about that. So maybe I don't have to do it if it blocks out. This is what I've knit so far. So the beginning was one little bit of leftover yarn. Now I'm using the second bit, and then I have this third bit, and I hope this will be enough to finish the square. If not, I will just have to use some other leftover yarn that has approximately the same thickness, but I'm pretty sure this should be enough. And it's just a very simple square, simple increases, knitting stockinette stitch. I will do the last couple of centimeters in garter stitch to make sure that the edge doesn't roll, and then that should be okay. Yeah, so this is the square that I'm going to donate. So knitting 2 squares at the time, but I made sure to knit different patterns so it doesn't get too boring. Yeah, that should be okay. That is everything I knit and crocheted last week. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!